Welcome to my session about making a Jamf uploader for everyone. Today I'll be covering why this was made, what makes the upload page stand out, and its features, and well, last but not least, how to build your own Jamf upload page. There should also be time left for questions at the end too, so let's get started. Who am I? My name is Joshua Harvey. I've been working in IT for a little over 10 years. I started with Apple. About a year or so later, I made the jump into government contracting. It paid better, and I got cookies. So I started out working for the Veterans Affairs in Washington, D.C., where I built and managed their Jamf servers. And now currently, I'm a senior principal systems administrator at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. Well, enough about me. Let's get started. How can I upload BAM, Learn to Cook, package to Jamf? Well, this simple and commonly asked question created a lot of headaches in our environment. Not only did it increase the amount of Advil we were taking, but it also added another item to the list of tasks we had to do and create and manage. Well, by now, some of you are thinking, wait, doesn't Jamf come with an application that does just this? And if so, you're 100% correct. But before we go any further, let me tell you a little bit about the environment that I work in. I'm one of two agency Jamf admins. Well, what does that mean? We manage the Jamf servers for all of NASA. Currently, we manage around 3,800 endpoints. These endpoints are located all over the US, various centers, various states, which are then managed by center-level Jamf admins, which also have site-level Jamf admins under them. And it kind of brings a whole new meaning to a complex environment. So, going back to the topic at hand, we need to answer Bender's question. Jamf created an extremely easy-to-use application for uploading items to your Jamf server. It's called Jamf Admin. And most of us are probably really familiar with this application and how to use it. So it may come as a surprise when I say that this really wasn't an answer that we could give. So do I just enjoy making things a lot harder than they should be? Oh, I'm stubborn, but I do enjoy the easy solutions and hate headaches as much as the next person. So what was stopping us from using this already made and easy to use solution? Let's take a look. Smart card are all the things. Says it all. In our environment, anything that a user needs to log into, it has to be configured for smart cards. Anything using basic authentication is frowned upon and is considered a finding during assessments. And those findings make those boxes red instead of green, and we get in trouble. And it always leads to more paperwork, additional approvals, and so on. So our site admins needed to be able to use their smart cards to log in and authenticate against their Jamf servers. And if you notice, I also have LOA 4 in the title. This stands for Level of Assurance 4. It's a NIST guideline that's now currently split up into several different things and titles and branches, but I work in the government and we don't catch up to the times as fast, so LOA it is, and that's what we go for. It's force of habit. So let's go ahead and add smart card authentication to the list and take a look at what else we have to have. Role-based access or site-based access controls are required. We have hundreds of site admins that each manage their own group of computers. We need to make sure that each of them can only manage their own computers, and that's it. Our environment, like I said before, it's very unique. Where most of our admins have to customize various settings in order for them to perform the work the scientist or anybody else needs. So being able to isolate those site admins to only see, touch, and manage their computers, it's a big deal. And of course, to add another layer of complexity to this, because at this point, it seems like that's what I like to do, center admins need access to everything in their center, but not other centers. And then agency admins need to be able to see everything everywhere. It gets kind of confusing. So let's go ahead and add role-based access to the list of must-haves, and let's see what we have. So we need something that's easy to use. It uploads to Jamf, has role-based access, and smart card authentication. And let's see how Jamf admin stacks up to it. And hopefully we can let Bender go ahead and use it to get that package uploaded. We know Jamf admin's easy to use. It uploads the Jamf servers. So we can cross those two right off the break. It looks similar to the application formerly known as iTunes, and it just works. But looking at the last two requirements, it doesn't look like Jamf admin is going to allow us to limit the access they get after authenticate. And since we're talking about authentication, it only supports basic authentication. And that gets us yelled at, and we can't stop that. And so it doesn't look like we can tell Bender to use Jamf admin. Well, we had to figure out a way for our admins to upload files into Jamf. So let's take a look at all of our solutions. First up, uploading everything manually. As you can see, I can't think of even one good thing about this. This would require our admins to send us the files that they want uploaded. And most of these packages are way beyond the size that they can send via email. So they had to use our internal file share portal. And when they did so, cross their fingers it didn't time out. And then finally, once it was uploaded, we'd be able to download and use Jamf admin to upload it. And with us being the agency admins, we were the only ones allowed to use Jamf admin, even though the box was still red and we still got yelled at. And another con was, depending on the time of day they sent it to us and where they were located, it would depend on how quickly we were able to upload it. Not being able to control the turnaround time was a huge deal for us, and we didn't want to put our name behind that. So let's see what else we have. Network shares. When I was hired, this was the method being used. If an admin needed to upload a file to Jamf, they would mount the network share, select the folder for their site, copy the file into that folder, and their work was done. Once that file finished copying over, a script that watched for file changes moved the file to the Jamf distribution point, ran an API call, and made it available in the Jamf console. Problem solved. Well, this option works 70% of the time, all the time. If the script didn't like a file, say for example there was a space in the file name or some other random issue, it would throw an error and stop working. And when this happened, any new files uploaded would just get stuck in that directory and wouldn't move at all. And it wouldn't move until we fixed it and found what was the issue and then restarted the script. And it became known as kicking the server or kicking the script. It wasn't a showstopper. However, when it stopped working, there weren't any notifications other than the admin getting impatient and emailing us saying, "Hey, my server's not, or my file's not in there." Okay, so then we had to not only figure out why it broke, hopefully fix what was ever wrong with that file, or manually upload, and we all know how much I love manually uploading things. And then we had to restart the script or kick it. And finally it would get up there. And each issue took time, and that time was taken from another task. And well, as the number of site admins kept growing, the number of packages that were being uploaded kept growing, and with "Can you kick the server" quickly becoming a popular subject line in our team mailbox, I decided to come up with a better solution, and so we could all get that time back. Mainly because I knew very little PowerShell, and that's what the script was written in. So what's our other solution? And after seeing the issues we were running into with the network share solution, and along with avoiding to, I don't want to learn PowerShell, I decided to take a step back and think of a better solution. We have now batting number 3, upload page. Not only would it be easy for admins to use, it would allow us to meet the last 2 requirements. With it being a web page, we could put it behind our SiteMinder application, and that'd give us the ability to protect it with smart card authentication. We could then customize the API calls using the username on the smart card to restrict access even further if we needed. And making a web page seemed like the perfect solution. The upload page would not also help us close both of the findings we had against us, which is that smart card authentication and that role-based access. And that was a huge deal. And we get time back too. The only downside to this solution was that I had to learn PHP. And I've never done anything with PHP before, so I had to learn it and quick. Because I didn't think of that when I sold the idea to our team and management. So let's let the fun begin. So after learning most of the PHP needed to and from the flights from JNUC last year, I was able to create the upload page that gave us a better answer to Bender's question. Well, he can use the Jamf upload page. With the upload page meeting everything we needed and allowed us to be fully compliant, it was a big deal. Not only were our site admins happy they could finally have more control over uploading with a more reliable process, but our bosses were happy too, and loved the fact that we took 2 red boxes and made them 2 green boxes, because that's how things work. And this is really awesome. But how does this thing work? What makes it do all these awesome things? And before getting too deep into how everything works, let's see how the upload page functions from a higher level. Let's take a look at what happens when buttons are pressed and clicked and pages are loaded. And then we can dive deeper into it section by section. So let's go swimming. To start, there's 3 types of files, or we can split everything up into 3 sections: HTML pages, PHP pages, and XML files. And on this slide, we have the XML pages. At the bottom of the list, we also have the lonely CSS file that is used to give the upload page some style. These pages do a few things. Mainly, they contain everything the user will see and interact with when using the upload page. However, they also have the important task of posting or sending information to the PHP pages. I'll be going into more details on this and breaking it down a few slides later. But let's move on and talk about the PHP pages. And here they all are. These pages are the ones making the API calls to the Jamf server. From pulling an up-to-date list of sites, downloading scripts, everything else. These pages do it all. Just like the HTML pages in the previous slide, I'll also be getting into what does what and all that other fun detail a little bit later on. Don't let the number of PHP pages scare you. Since I wrote this while I was still learning, I found it easier to have 1 page for each function I was trying to do instead of making 1 PHP page to rule them all. Each of these pages they're named based on what they do. You'll notice that 3 of the pages in the list start with get. These 3 files are the ones that use the next and last type of file type, and it's XML. These files are where those 3 PHP pages, starting with get, throw the data they're getting. During the part of the session where we go over building the upload page, you'll notice that these pages aren't mentioned at all. I promise I didn't leave them out by accident. I'll get into that later. These files get created and overwritten with new information every time a page that uses the information is loaded. Well, what does that mean? Well, for example, any page that has a site selection menu, anytime that's loaded, the getSites.php page is called, runs that API call, and dumps that up-to-date list in the site list.xml. So it's always 100% up to date. Whether you remove a site, whether you add a site, anytime it needs to be used, it's ready. And now that we've talked and gone over each of the categories that make the upload page, why don't we take a look at the workflow of the page and how all these things fit together. So let's go ahead, type our URL for upload page in a browser. And when this happens, we see two of our HTML pages get called, loaded. First one's index.html, and the second one is home.html. And it'll look a little something like this. As I mentioned in the previous slide, there's two pages doing the work for us. We have the index.html page. It loads the menu bar, the header, the footer, and it gives the admin using the page contact information for someone or who to reach out to if something goes wrong. You can customize it and make it your own with this file. And then we have the home.html page. And this is kind of like the landing page for the upload site. You can put directions, you can put a warning banner, choice is yours. But this is what they'll first see when they load the page. Well, why don't we click on the package link and see what happens next? So we click on the package link, see what gets loaded. We have the index, because that still contains the header and the footer. But the home.html got replaced by packageupload.html. And there's also a PHP page in the mix now, and getSites.php. Let's take a look at how it looks before going more into detail. We now have the option to select a Jamf site. However, you may notice that I only have two pages being highlighted. I mentioned three were being used now. With the index.html only containing that static information, like the header and the footer, we can set that aside, and we can actually take a closer look at the package upload page and how it works and see where that missing page is. And taking a closer look at the package upload.html page, you can see the missing page is being used in the background. When we clicked on the package option, the getSites.php page ran an API call to get a list of all the sites being used. It then takes that information, dumps it into that XML file. And since this happens when the page is first loaded, everything is updated and ready for use. Oh, almost. It does contain all the sites being used. However, it's still raw data, and nobody wants a drop-down menu filled with XML. It's not fun. Well, that's where the packageupload.html page comes into play. With the site list.xml already being updated whenever the page is first loaded and called for, we already have that readily available. So we can have the packageupload.html page do the parsing for us. To do the parsing, I use a jQuery function that runs when the package upload page is first loaded. This function takes the contents of the site list.xml file, finds each of the sites, and adds them to the option tag of the drop-down menu. Now, we not only have an updated list of sites, but it's not a gobbledygook of XML, and it looks like it should. So the users are happy. Well, Early in this session, I had mentioned that the HTML pages not only display data, but post or send data as well. An example of this is when the upload package button is selected. When this button is selected, a post call to the package upload.php page is ran, and it includes the site that was selected, name of the package, and the size of the package. Well, what does that PHP page do with it? It does the following, does three things. First, it appends the site name selected to the beginning of the package name. This will allow our Jamf admins to quickly search for the packages inside the Jamf console that only their site uses. This also avoids accidentally overwriting packages of the same name. So if we have two sites and they both like Firefox, one with incognito, one without cognito, they don't have to do anything different. They select the site, they upload it, and both packages are appended with their site name. So that eliminates any issues about cross-contamination with packages or anything. Well, what else does it do? It uploads the package to the Jamf distribution point with that new name. So not only are we changing the display name, but we're also changing the file name. And then finally, it runs an API call to inform the JSS of the new package that was added and makes it readily available for use. And this workflow is pretty much the same for each of the other options on the upload page. Everything pretty much works exactly like this is. The names will be different. And hopefully this gave a good overview of how all these pages interact with each other and function. Well, building it. We've gone over everything but this. How does one build their own Jamf upload page? I've done all the trying stuff until it works already, and eventually came up with the contents for this next grouping of slides. So we can jump right into the requirements. In order to build the upload page, you need to have the following: a web server with PHP installed. This gets installed on the same server as your Jamf distribution point. I haven't tried standing it up on a separate server. I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure it's same instructions, but I haven't tried it yet just because everything is readily available for me. What's the next thing? Jamf API access. Since we're using the curl command, we're going to have to authenticate to our Jamf console. And that's hard-coded into the PHP scripts. So you definitely don't want to use your account. I always use a service account. Could be an LDAP service account, could be a local Jamf account. That way it's not tied to you. Multiple people are responsible for it, and you can easily cut it off and throw it away or change the password if needed. And finally, you'll need the resource files from my GitHub. It'll contain all the files that I've mentioned over here. It also contains instructions on how to do everything that I'm talking about right now. I have the link several places in this slide deck as well as the session details. So in our production environment, we use a Windows server with IIS and PHP. Our development servers use CentOS with Apache and PHP. So it's possible to do this on both platforms. The only difference is the way you stand up the web server and install PHP. After that, everything else is the same. I found the CentOS setup a lot easier than Windows process was because I like Linux better than Windows. And as you can see, this is all you have to do to stand up Apache and PHP. Once you enable the CentOS software collection repo, you can do everything on one command line, and that's kind of why I like it. One line, done. And once everything is installed, all you'll have to do is enable it and start it using the systemctl binary. And just to point out, I haven't tested this with Ubuntu, but I don't have the commands up here, but it's the same exact process except apt-get. So now what's next? Well, we have PHP and Apache installed. We just need to configure Apache and tell it to send any files that end with PHP to the PHP service we installed on the previous slide. Sounds really complicated. I promise you it's not. That's all it is. We're going to create a conf file in the etc httpd conf.d. It can be named anything you want. I like to stick with what they have in the tutorials, so hence the name right there. You can copy and paste the entire nano line and all the contents in the blue box, and you have it set up. Once you're finished, you'll just need to restart the HTTPD service in order to apply the changes, and you're good to go. I've included the link for the installation guide on CentOS's wiki. I've used this guide several times and recommend it to anyone who needs to install PHP and Apache on a CentOS box and doesn't really want to do a lot of work. It's really easy. I also have a link for the Windows installation guide on my resources slide. It's also on my GitHub repo. And I've used that as well when I had to stand this up on our production server. So both resources helped me out a lot. So we installed Apache and PHP. Oh, we're getting serious now. What's next? Oh, we talked about the API account, and I use a throwaway account for testing, and then I switch it over to our service account for production. So now we have PHP, we have Apache, we have the service account. Last thing you'll need is the resource files from my GitHub repository. You can use the git clone option right here. I've also included the repository URL in the resource section of the slide deck, as well as the presentation settings on the PSU website. And once you have these files downloaded, we can start rolling up our sleeves and having some fun. We can set things up. I find it easier to make a list of all the things I need to do. I have tons of whiteboards in my office, and they're all filled up with to-do lists. So as you can see, I made a list here. We just finished the web server. We got a thumbs up for that. Well, we still have 3 very angry thumbs downs. So let's go ahead, keep rolling on, and see if we can change those thumbs. So first, we got directory prep. And before we start copying everything over, we'll need to make the directories for everything. As you can see, I'm using the CentOS directories for Apache, but I'm adding the PHP directory, and then you'll also notice packages, scripts, and profiles. You don't need to name these the same as I did. I like to have everything contained in one. It makes it 10 times easier for me to remember things, and I'm horrible at remembering things, so anything I can do to help, I'll do. We haven't copied anything over yet. We're just prepping everything. And I have on loop the directory creation for Nibbler. So we can see they're just empty. Oh, what's next? We have the directories made. Now we can copy the files you downloaded over to the right places. PHP to PHP, HTML to HTML. And this is an idea of what it should look like. On your Jamf distribution server, you have PHP and Apache installed, or IIS if you're using Windows. And then you have the web root. And inside that web root directory, you have the HTML files, and you have the PHP files. notice I don't have the XML files here. We don't need to do anything to make those happen. Those get created automatically when the API calls are ran. So if everything's looking like this, we can keep going. So now we get to configure things. And we're going to set up the API account and the curl settings. Each of these PHP pages contains a function to do a curl command. And that's what does all the magic. And in order for these API calls to work, we need to add our Jamf server URL and the username and password for our API account. And what does that look like? I like examples. So I have two types of examples. The first is what the entire line is going to look like in each of those PHP files. You can see up top, we have the API user and the API password for your Jamf API account. And below that, it's usually around line 47. It'll go up or down depending on the page. You enter your Jamf server URL. You don't have to do the full URL, just the shorthand version, and everything else is static. And just to show you, again, how easy it is to set up, we're just going to enter our API username. I'm going to enter our API password. I promise it's not the password that I use. And then at the bottom, we just highlight Jamf URL and change it to our URL. And you see we didn't touch the JSS resource or the sites. We won't need to touch that. It's going to stay exactly the same. Once this is done to all those pages, you've set up your API account and your curl settings, and your PHP pages should work perfectly. So what's next? Upload directories. Well, what does this mean? Well, pretty much it sets where the files are being saved locally. And we don't have as many files using it, or as many pages using it, but these 4 pages will use these upload directories. And if you notice, when we were doing the directory prep, we made packages, scripts, and profiles. I don't like to touch things that are in production. I'd rather copy things to a temporary place, and then copy them over once I know it works. So changing that is as easy as replacing scripts or profiles or packages. And that way you always have a temporary copy of the packages with the profiles and scripts. Those are uploaded via API calls in XML. So I find it best to have copies of that for reference if we need to take a look into it, or if it wasn't successful, we have a reference point. And I love my examples. This is how easy it is to configure this. So I did all the hard work, and then you just have to type. And what's next? So this is a real big feature that I was happy about. In Jamf version 10.10, there was an issue where you couldn't upload configuration profiles or create configuration profiles on anything outside of full Jamf Pro. Well, there's only 2 people that have access to full Jamf Pro. Everybody else has access to their site. So they couldn't upload anything. When it came to a configuration profile, they couldn't create it, and that was a problem. So I was able to quickly set up a page where they could upload an unsigned configuration profile, and then it would display a link in the window where they can click it, and it brings them right to that edit page. And if this is something that you want to utilize, all you have to do is replace your Jamf Pro with your Jamf server URL. And that is that. So let's see. Let's take a look at our progress check. I like lists. We have our PHP pages done. So we got 2 out of 4. I don't like the thumbs down still, so let's fix it. Let's set up our HTML pages. And we have that static index.html, and this is where your customizing will be done to make it your own. You can add a logo, you can change the title. Please change the email address, because if they email me, I'm not going to know what's happening. So please do that. And just to give you an example of where it is, I always go to examples. Yeah, the header and the footer. And then you can see inside is that home.html. Well, what are some of the other ways to customize this page and make it yours? I have scripts up there, but we all know that we have scripts inside of our JSS that we don't want everybody to see. Well, how do we stop that? Well, I have a filter built into the script upload.html page. And all you have to do to use it is remove the comments and add the value to filter where the keyword is. Say, in our example, we have admin prefixed to all the scripts we don't want anybody else to see. So I would put admin there, and it would filter them out. What does that look like? All right, well, we already have the keyword admin. I've already commented it out. I have the script list.xml already populated, but it didn't filter. Well, it's because this filter is built into the script upload.html page. When the page gets loaded, it's going to look something like that. And these 3 options are the only ones that are appear on that drop-down menu. So it's easily customizable. You can add multiple filters to it, but it's just another way that you can make it yours depending on the environment that you're at. That's HTML files. That was quick and easy. And you notice I have PHP settings up there, and we already did PHP, but these aren't in the actual PHP pages for the upload page. These settings are going to be set in the php.ini file, and the location's going to vary, but it's going to be the same exact file whether you're using Windows or Linux. And the 3 values that you have to be sure to set: the post max size, the upload max size, or file size, and the memory limit. The top 2, I have matching in our environment, and I have them set to 6 gigs. And hope that I don't have an admin that's going to try to upload anything bigger. The memory limit, I have set to 8, just solely so there's a little bit of buffer room. Be careful when you're setting that. Check your server resources. Make sure you actually have enough memory before you just set it and then take everything and then realize you messed up, and yeah, it's not fun. So we have 4 thumbs up. We have it entirely configured. We have the ability now to customize anything that we want, and we can recap all the issues that we've resolved. We have the ability to use Smart Card Login, become LOA4 compliant. You can use SiteMinder like we do. You can integrate it with SAML. It's extremely easy with Apache. So you have that part done. Role-based access. After logging in, the end users don't see everything in there. They can't delete the packages willy-nilly. They can only upload and append it to their site. So we've conquered that part. We all know it uploads to Jamf. That's the whole topic. And it's easy to use. It's a website. But wait, there's more. It's web-based. With the upload page being a web page, it's accessible from any computer that can access the internet and your Jamf server. So this removes the additional step of having to install Jamf admin on every single computer that you work on, and then going back and updating that version every time you upgrade Jamf. There's no need to do any of that. If it has a browser, if it can touch your Jamf, you're good to go. And it's customizable. Everything that I've gone over today, it gives you the ability to stand up an upload page for your company. And with it being a web page and using API calls, you have the ability to create pages and add custom features of your own without having to tear it all down and rebuild it. And just as an example of that, that's what I was able to do with that profile page. I built this first not having the profile option. Ran into that bug. It wasn't getting fixed for 2 versions. I have angry admins with pitchforks at my door, and I'm not waiting 2 versions for that. So I customized it, quickly came up with the profile page, and it works. So it's just the ability to customize it is endless. I've mentioned this resource page a lot. I have my GitHub repo up there. If you want to learn more about PHP, feel free, dive in. It's boring, but it's fun. HTML documentation. And I've also included the Apache and PHP install guides for CentOS, as well as the IIS and PHP install guide. So it doesn't matter what platform you're on, you have the resources in your hands to make this your own. And questions?
So, general admin account credential question. What's the best way to put your API account password in? Is it just plain text inside the PHP file?
It's plain text, and I'm sure there's ways to base 64 it. I'm the only one who has access to, well, 2 people have access to the servers where these files are being uploaded, so we both know the password. But I'm sure there's a way to either base 64 it and encode it.
You said that this was your first time with PHP. Was there a reason you went with that? Was it like a company restriction? Like, why did you pick PHP?
Google.
Okay.
It was the first option, and I had to sell it, so yeah.
Ready?
I might have missed it, but how long did it take you to do this whole thing from start to finish?
Including trial and error?
Well, if it's in between the 2 endposts, yeah.
Probably about 3 weeks.
I'm sorry if I missed this somewhere at the front, but how did you implement the smart card authentication?
With it being a website, we either have a SAML integration or SiteMinder configuration.
Okay.
And with it being a website, we can just put it behind and protect it by SiteMinder.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So when you're using the Jamf API, it looks like you're just, like when you're posting to /scripts/ID 0, is Jamf just automatically taking that new script and new package and assigning the next highest integer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you post it with 0, it's automatically going to create a new ID. And it's a way to make sure there's no conflicts or anything.
Gotcha.
If you're posting all of them with 0, how often do you have to go through and clean up more recent versions? Because normally when you upload, it'll overwrite if it has the same name.
With the scripts and with the scripts and profiles, we clean up once a month. Just something we've always done. With the packages, they get overwritten. So if it has the same name, it'll get overwritten. But we make it a daily task or a monthly task to go through and just housekeep
So just kind of curious about the master I'm assuming this is your master distribution point
Yeah.
that you run it on. How do you handle other DPs and other locations? Do you have web servers for them, or you don't
Nope.
have any more
Um,
DPs, or?
We have a nightly replication script that runs that'll sync all the packages. It's not a big deal if it's not on one server at that time. It just fails over to the other one. But every night it gets synced up. So as long as it's on your master one, it's at least available, and it will fail over if it hits the secondary one first. All right, cool. Well, thank you, everybody.